Okay, thanks. So I guess I can answer Felicity's question, who comes next, by saying the exact same sentence, because who does come next? So I'm Chris, this is Mary. We're both from Red Hat's Open Innovation Labs. And today we're just going to share with you some of the things that we've learned during the pandemic, really talk about some of the building blocks of agility and the sort of the practices that can help build that organizational resilience, which I think has been sort of quite lacking and sort of shown to be during the pandemic. And the vehicle we're going to use to tell this story is the World Health Organization, or the WHO. Okay, so just in case you don't know who the WHO is, the WHO is a United Nations agency focused on international public health. And we were specifically working with the World Health Organization Academy, who their task is really to sort of reach 10 million learners, healthcare professionals, around the world by 2025. And so they want to do this by creating an open learning platform that will increase the efficiency and effectiveness of getting that message out to healthcare workers on the front line. And just beyond some of these challenges that we've got up here, just as a bit of context, it currently takes between 10 and 17 years for proven advice to become adopted practice. So if you think about that, that's, we can put information across the world at the touch of, a fraction of a second, yet it takes 10 years for proven medical advice to become practice. And Red Hat Open Innovation Labs, we work very much face-to-face. So we put a lot of stock in the team. What we're aiming to do really is reduce the barriers to adopting technology and actually sort of delivering fantastic products through the technology. And actually, the problem isn't the technology, it's the people and the process and all the rest of it. So we put a lot of stock in the team and developing that, and that generally means a lot of face-to-face. So a lot of tactile, building that psychological safety, and so on. So we're all together, and that's why we call it a residency, because people actually come together and work in an intense fashion like that. So, and we were all ready to do that. We were set to do that. Everyone was moving to Lyon. It's going to be beautiful. And then the pandemic hit. And so we found ourselves with two teams. So the Red Hat team, which is effectively, for those who are familiar with team topologies, it's the enabling team. And we had the WHO team, who's the stream-aligned team in those team topology language. And together, that totaled 16 people across 9 countries and 5 different time zones. So we just thought, this isn't going to work. Like, how are we going to do that? That's remote, that's asynchronous, we're used to being face-to-face. But we looked at that and we decided to ask ourselves a question. So how might we run this residency remotely? And by asking that question, that how might we question, it allows us to really challenge our assumptions, challenge our preconceptions, our biases, and allows us to really sort of look at it differently. And what we decided was, as we'd done that, we could then design an experiment that we could then take forward and see if it would work. And that's the essence of Agile, really. Being able, I think, we just talked about it a moment ago. It's that being, something new comes up, new challenge, new constraint in this case. How are we going to deal with that? And how do we sort of design an experiment that will allow us to take that forward and work with that? And I think a lot of organizations have really struggled with that in the pandemic. And I think that's highlighted the lack of resilience within organizations out there. And it's got a lot of sort of brittle organizations. And they tend to be the ones that are overly focused on cost, like the bottom line. And they're not so much looking at the top line of value creation. So, focusing on the team interaction, autonomy, having a bit of slack to be able to pivot and move and do these things is really important. And without it, you end up on the right here with this low resilience and poor organizational agility. So again, as we asked ourselves that question, what we realized was, actually all the principles and practices that we've been using face-to-face for so long, and all the kind of the foundations of that actually enabled us to do that remotely. So we take a team-first approach. We focus really strongly on psychological safety and minimizing the cognitive load. And Mary's going to share some practices in a minute about all this stuff. So these are things that you can take away and sort of use yourselves. And we've got a load more. We haven't got enough time to talk about them all, unfortunately, but we will at least give you a flavor. And these are these open practices that we use. They re-engender transparency, inclusivity, community, collaboration, and adaptability. The other thing that allows us to do is make sure, one of the things that we do is make sure that we're very much aligned on the mission. And that enables the team to feel like they have purpose and bring their passion to solving those problems and those challenges. And as I mentioned, we're hypothesis-led in the way that we approach the challenge. So over to Mary, who's going to share with you some of the practices.
Right, so this is our secret, and it's not a secret because we're openly talking about it everywhere we go, and it's open source. You can read everything about it online as well on the openpracticelibrary.com. So this is the Mobius loop. It's a product development framework, and this framework helps us to effectively combine lean product development, agile, DevOps, and any other approach or method that we need in order for us to tackle the challenges and actually have success with that use case that we have at hand. So this framework here helps us to make sure that help the team go through continuous discovery and delivery to best meet the customer needs. So on your left-hand side, you have the discovery area of the loop. This is where the thinking is taking place. On the right-hand side, you have delivery. This is where the doing is taking place. And this framework helps us to create the right cadence between thinking and doing, and make sure that the team is not getting stuck in thinking too much about what they need to build, or building things for too long, and then that is not aligned with the customer needs anymore. So basically, we are finding the information and building our hypotheses and start working on them so we can validate the impact that they're having on our experiments. And then the team is able to have clarity about the outcomes that they want to achieve. They know how meaningful the work is, and they can see the impact of their work right away. They don't have to wait for too long. So this is really, really powerful, but it's not enough. We also need psychological safety, as Chris was mentioning, right? So how do we bring that? How do we build trust within the team? We have the foundation layer that you can see here that is going to support that. So we have practices. We have lots of practices that we ran with WHO. We are not going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to focus on a few, and you can come to the booth and we will show you more and talk more about the other ones. But there is this practice called social contract that I really, really like, because it's a very simple practice, but it's very powerful, because this is how the team is getting together to talk about the team dynamics, the team interactions, how they want to work together. This practice codifies the behaviors that the team wants to see. We usually ignore those things. We bring people together to work, and we forget that they have different backgrounds. They're used to do things in a different way, especially this team from different countries, right? So they have different cultures. And we don't talk about, okay, but how do we work as a team? What are the dynamics that we want to see here? And this is what we did with this team. We discussed how we wanted to work, and we created the social contract, and we were committed to it. And this was very, very powerful to create trust within the team. And this is what's going to enable the team to innovate and to experiment. The fact that they can trust each other and they have psychological safety. Another important thing for us with this remote team was the communication aspect, right? So even when we were face-to-face, communication was always a challenge. So how do we address that in the remote environment with this remote team? We were focusing very, very much on visualization of work. So everything that we had going on within the team, we had to make sure that we could visualize that, all the aspects of the work, and we could share that with everybody who should have access to that information. So we were over-communicating everything we were doing, and by visualizing it, we could also make sure that we were aligned, because frequently, when someone was trying to share an idea via text, they thought that someone else was understanding what they meant. But once they got to the virtual board and started to draw things, to actually move Post-its around, they realized that they weren't aligned. So the visualization of work helped us with the communication aspect and also alignment. And practices like definition of ready and definition of done, they are simple practices that we usually think that we know a lot about them and we overlook them, but they were really important in this remote setup because then we get to agree with your team, okay, what do we mean when we say that something is ready for us to start working on it? Or what do we mean when we say that something is done, right? If you're thinking about a team that is spread across multiple time zones, these practices are very important because sometimes people some of the team members can have a question and the other person who is going to answer that question is not available. So when you spend time to agree on these things up front, you are making sure that you are moving those obstacles and people can actually work and you are enabling flow. Okay, this is something that I really, really like. So when we are working face-to-face, we can see how people are feeling, right? It's easier for us to notice if they're happy, if they're having a bad day, if they're stressed out. But when we have a remote team, it is a bigger challenge to do that. Sometimes people don't even turn on their cameras. And especially, I am a facilitator, so when I'm facilitating a workshop and I cannot see how people are feeling, that makes it harder for me to pivot and change the practices and how I'm facilitating them. So we use this practice, not only this, we have different ways we do that, we change that based on the context, but we have this practice called mood marbles that helps us to communicate and visualize how people are feeling. So if people are feeling well, they can just use a green marble, and we know that those people are feeling good. If they are not feeling good for any reason, they use a red marble, and we look at the jar and we can see how the team is feeling at that moment. So this is really, really simple and helps us to get a little bit of what we had when we were working face-to-face, and we can just look at people's faces. But we still had another challenge, a very big one. It was, okay, when we were face-to-face, we were able to build personal connections. We were going for lunch together, we were having coffee breaks. When we were waiting for the meeting room to be ready for us, we were talking about personal stuff, about the trip that we took during our vacation, the book that we were reading. We used to talk about those things. But when we have only virtual calls, we stopped talking about them. So how do we bring that to this remote team? So we did that in different ways. This is one of them. We created a team space on our Miro board, and every team member had their own area. You can see here, every team member had their own area on the board, and they could share personal stuff. They could talk about the games they were playing, where they wanted to go during their holidays, their favorite food, the book they were reading, the songs that they were listening to, and they were adding information to it incrementally throughout the residency. And talking about it whenever they had opportunity, like before starting a daily stand-up, they would take 5 minutes to have a conversation about something on the team space. And this helped the team to build personal connections, again, enabling trust, creating psychological safety. Very, very important for this remote team and for all teams. But again, this alone, only cultural practices, discovery, delivery, this is not enough, right? We also need engineering practices. Engineering practices are also foundational. So we had with this team a lot of practices that we used: continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, everything as code, automation. All those things also helped us to reduce cognitive load. Again, we don't have time to talk about all of them, but I want to show you one way we were doing it. We were using pairing and mobbing, so pair programming, mob programming, to actually make sure that we were sharing skills and using those engineering practices the right way. You can see how we were pairing remotely, using the right tools for it. And I want to link back to our social contract. This was part of the social contract discussion, because we agreed as a team that we were going to do pair programming, mob programming, and we discussed how the dynamics was going to work. So very, very important to make sure that we as an enabling team could work well with the Streamline team.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary. I knew it was a great idea bringing you here. It made me look good. Okay, so let's talk about the outcomes. We were really pleasantly surprised. I don't mind saying, we really did. What it showed up was that our practices and our fundamental principles how solid they were, and you know, from this sort of different and unexpected angle. What we ended up with was, you know, as I said earlier, like, it shouldn't really work. Yeah, we've got 16 people in a team across 9 countries and 5 different time zones, trying to work remotely and asynchronously. Most of the WHO team hadn't even been inducted to the WHO. They were brand new employees. They certainly hadn't met each other. And yet, by the end of it, what we saw was this really solid, high-performing team with strong psychological safety, and they were really ready to continue on building out the product and continue to take that and evolve that and take it further. And that's another thing they had. They had working software that had been user-tested. They had a platform which they actually really understood how to use, so how to architect their application to get, you know, squeeze the real value out of the platform and sort of develop on from there. They had the seeds of an open community, so they're looking for contributors and looking for people to sort of join them in this quest, to have a really significant impact on world health. So they had the seeds of that, and that's obviously something they'll continue to grow. I think anybody who's tried to establish a community will understand how difficult that is. They've got that. And they've got stories as well. So stories change the world, right? So they have a story where they're the heroes of that story. And that allows them to take people with them. So other people wanting to be a part of that story, you know, be a part of their own story, and that helps seed that change within the organization and really help that change stick within an organization. But they also had stories to build that open community with. So if I'm just going to leave you with a couple of takeaways, we've got this sort of taking the team-first approach, really focusing on psychological safety, purpose in what you're actually doing, and being able to bring your passion to that. Reducing the cognitive load is really, really important. And that, you know, how you reduce that cognitive load will depend upon the team, right? 'Cause what's cognitive load for one is not necessarily for another. So that's really, really critical. Taking a hypothesis-led approach, using these wonderful open practices, which Mary showcased just a small number of those. We could have easily done an hour on this, but we can come and have a chat with us afterwards if you like about those. And as I'm doing right now, over-communicating. Really over-communicate, because remote and asynchronous interactions are really tricky. So making sure you really put a focus on that and not sort of taking things for granted will allow you to really move forward very, very quickly and achieve incredible outcomes. So I don't think we're going to get time for questions, I'm guessing. So to satisfy your curiosity, bring your questions and your curiosity over to our stand. We're literally just at the back there. We're running an experiment today as well. We've got a virtual reality experiment, so you can speak to one of our experts on psychological safety, Tom Geraghty. We've got a raffle for a book, which I failed to bring up here, but basically we've got 5 books. They are effectively a field guide for everything that we do. So as you know, we're an open source company. We're really looking to open and have as many people as possible benefit from what we do and how we approach that. So there's 5 of those available. We'll be running that raffle at the final break. So come and get in on that. Sorry, you'll need to sign up before then. That's when we're drawing it. Manuel is going to be doing a book signing as well for Team Topology's book. So we've got 50 copies of that to give away. And if you're interested in getting involved in the community for this learning platform, then the email is in the bottom. And I'm sure these slides will be distributed afterwards. So please do take part in that. And that's it from us. Thank you very much.